Good day, everyone. It is Caitlin, and today I'm going to talk to you about how I pack for a living history event. Okay, so this is going to be just very quick, very simple, and it's just what I do. So you may do something different. This may not work for you, but I remember being brand new to living history and being completely lost as to what I needed for the weekend, what I was to pack, how I was going to spend my time. I didn't even know how to process what I would need. I didn't, people were saying, well, you need to think about what you're doing this weekend. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm expected to do. No one's told me. And I wanted to kind of help other people perhaps be a little bit more at ease about what to pack at an event. So I tried to make this as time period neutral as possible. And it's you can just download it down below and you can modify it and do whatever you need to it and make it a little bit more specific to you as needed. So let's go and get started. All right, so this is the list. So it's called the Living History Packing List, and I did it by section. So you can see there's a clothing section, and there's toiletries, and bedding, food, occupation, miscellaneous, and the notes down there. So let's go ahead and talk about clothing, which is the first part. So first thing, you're first going to need footwear, something to wear on your feet. Stockings are important. So stockings would be the first thing listed. Recommended 1 per day plus an extra pair, just because they do get very dirty, dusty, and nasty. And putting on dirty stockings the next morning is just a really gross feeling. So if at all possible, the things I wear next to my skin, I do pack at least 1 a day, if not 1 a day plus an extra. You can get away with 1 pair of stockings. I've seen plenty of people do it. It just grosses me out. So that's my recommendation. But of course, you don't have to go with it. As far as getting stockings, this is really not a video on where to find stuff or where to get stuff, that sort of thing. But there are patterns for knitted stockings if you want to knit your own. There is the assistant knitting teachers. The assistant knitting teacher's book. There's a book published in 1817 that lists how to make stockings, and you can buy a reprint of the 1891 version on Amazon, and it's an exact reprint from the 1871. So it was published roughly every 20 years from 1817. So like there's an 1830s one, I'm pretty sure there's an 1850s publication as well, and either a late 1860s or an early 1870s version, and they're all basically the exact same thing. So this is like a stocking pattern that's really good for the entirety of the 19th century. But you can also just buy stockings. There are lots and lots of reproduction stockings, and people who sell historic clothing will often carry stockings. Garters, which are not necessary in some time periods, but in other time periods they are. That's just something you're just going to have to know and about your time period. Kind of looking into that a little bit and see if you actually need them for your stockings or not. And then boots, shoes, slippers, moccasins, whatever. Take into account the weather. So I have some fabric slippers that I will wear occasionally to events. But I wouldn't wear them to the event I'm going to in 2 weeks. That last year it rained the entire weekend. Those shoes would be ruined, so I would wear my leather boots for that particular event. I have shoes that are wool uppers, and I wouldn't necessarily wear those out to a rainy event either. Just keep them from getting gross and nasty. So do take weather into account when you're doing that. And of course, footwear isn't universal, and there are plenty of impressions that would not use footwear. I've been known to go barefoot every once in a while, so not necessarily a necessity, but it's something you want to think about for most impressions. Next up, underpinnings. So a shift or chemise, depending on your time period. Sometimes called a camisole. Like there's plenty of different words for it throughout the time periods. But again, I recommend 1 per day plus an extra. Drawers, which are not necessary for every time period either. I don't really wear them pre-1860s myself, although they do exist earlier in the 19th century. I just hate them, so I don't wear them. But again, if you're going to wear them, 1 per day plus an extra. If you're in 20th century, you may not be having these types of garments. You may be having, tap pants and a bra. Just modify it as needed for your time period. I kind of geared this towards the 19th century a little bit. And yeah, basically mid-19th century. Stays or corset, if you're doing a time period that you need one. Also, you haven't gathered by now, as it's like the women's packing list. This is not necessarily for guys or kids, because I have not had enough experience in those situations to know what to bring. So I am not an expert on that, and perhaps down the road we will get to those videos. But for now, we're just talking about women. But yes, stays and corsets, as needed. If you're doing a time period where you're having to lace your corset up and it's not like a front bust that you can open without having to unlace, if you're going to have to lace it at all, you're going to want a lacing needle. I've been known to forget mine, and then we struggle to get my corset laced. So bring lacing needles and extras if you possibly can. And of course, petticoats and hoops, all your skirt supports. So when I'm doing Regency stuff, that just means a single petticoat that, has the shoulder straps or a bodice or something like that. When we're talking 1840s, I may be bringing 5 or 6 petticoats, including a corded one. If we're talking 1860s, it may be just a couple petticoats if I'm doing like lower class stuff, or it may be a petticoat, a hoop, or a cage crinoline, and maybe 1 or 2 petticoats go on top of that. If I'm doing 1880s, it might be a petticoat, a bustle, and then another petticoat. If I'm doing World War I, it's going to be just a single petticoat, most likely. So again, that's kind of tailored to your exact impression, but your skirt supports is basically what I'm going with this particular section. Dresses, I recommend 1 to wear plus a spare. And I only say that because I have had lots of bad luck with dresses. There was one time where my pocket was at the exact height of all the cabinet hardware, and I ripped out the entire half of my skirt on a cabinet drawer. There was also the very first time I wore a silk dress to an event, I was carrying down ink and a pen because I was writing, and apparently I just tipped the inkwell just enough to where I got it all down the front of my silk dress. And there are many, many, many other stories that we will not get into about me ruining the dresses that I'm wearing. So I always bring 2 to an event. That way, if something happens to one, I have something else to wear, even if I'm wearing that second dress only to fix the first dress. So in the case of the one I ripped out the skirt, it was mendable. So I put on another dress, and I just spent that morning mending my skirt and reattaching the gauging to the bodice. So, yeah, 1 to wear plus a spare is always a good plan there. And you do not want to forget things that go with your dresses, like a neckerchief, if that's what you're wearing, or a collar, cuffs, undersleeves, that sort of thing. Things that get attached to your dress just for cleanliness. So like a collar around, just to make sure the dress doesn't get dirty inside the neckline, or the same with cuffs, undersleeves, or a neckerchief would serve the same purpose. So make sure you're including all that as needed. Headwear, cap, which again, I do recommend 1 to wear plus a spare. And this is not, of course, for all time periods. So later on in the 19th century, women are not wearing caps as much, especially younger women. So that's going to be based on your impression and who you are and what you're doing. Women in service are more likely to wear caps, whether that be a maid or a nurse or just anyone who's doing manual labor is more likely, not even manual labor, but just labor in general, is more likely to be wearing a cap than a woman who is not. So if you need a cap, keep that in mind. And then your actual headwear, your bonnet or your hood, depending on the weather. So, or hat. Hats could be included here as well, especially if you're doing 20th century stuff. So, of course, that would look different if I'm in the summer. I might wear a straw bonnet for the 1830s. If it was winter, I'd wear a hood. So really that's going to be tailored to the exact event, the time of year, and what you're going to need to be comfortable. And of course, outerwear. So I kind of have these split into 2 types, light and heavy. So a light outerwear would be something like a mantle or a shawl, something that's kind of just draped over, that kind of provides a little bit of warmth, but then a heavy cloak or a jacket or a paletot or something that's much more robust and has it's a little bit thicker, that's going to keep you warmer. And of course, when it is really cold, you definitely need, layers. So this is also where I put things like if you were wearing scarves or gloves. I was looking for the word gloves. Anything like that, that's going to help keep you warm, I would put into this section. Again, you're going to really need to look at your event, look at the weather that's going to be happening. So if it was raining, I would probably wear a wool cloak before I'd wear a nice mantle that maybe has a silk lining that could get stained. If it's only just slightly chilly, I might wear a shawl. If it's going to be very cold, I might bring a Sontag, just like a little wrap, have a shawl, and then I might wear my cloak over all that, or I might wear my palto over all that, just to give myself some extra layers, because there's warmth in the layers. Then I have a nightwear and undress, which all of these are as needed, because most events you are not required to have period nightwear. I think it adds to the ambiance, so I wear it, but not everyone's comfortable with that. If the event isn't requiring period nightwear, then you do whatever makes you feel comfortable. But I do have here, as needed, nightgown, nightcap, wrapper, and these can also be tailored to a particular event. So like my 1830s nightgown is different than my 1860s nightgown. And then I don't have a winter 1830s nightgown. I need one, but I haven't made one yet. I do have a summer and a winter nightgown for 1860. So I have one that's just cotton, and then I have one that's canton flannel that is much warmer and very nice when it's cold. But then, if it's super warm outside, I may not even need a white nightgown. I might just wear my chemise, because that is light and it has an open neckline and short sleeves and it's short, just past my knee. So that's actually more comfortable for me in the summer than an actual nightgown would be. I sing the praises of wrappers all day long. They are fantastic. Anytime, especially if I don't have time to make two dresses, I'll make a wrapper and a dress for a particular time period, because I know that if I ruin the dress in some way, I can still wear a wrapper and still be presentable. But a wrapper really comes in handy after hours when I'm hanging out with friends and I'm tired of being fully laced in a corset and having tons of petticoats on, and I'm just ready to kind of relax a little bit. A wrapper is fantastic for those times when you need to do that, because it literally just wraps around. Most of mine just hook an eye at the top, and I have a belt that holds it at the waist, and that is the only closures I have to do. They're expandable waist, so I can loosen my corset if I want to. I can go out my corset, and everything's kind of hidden. You can't tell I'm not wearing anything underneath. So I do like my wrappers, but that's more of a 19th century thing. So it's different for other time periods. And accessories as needed. So jewelry, belts and buckles, parasol, any decorative hair pieces, whether you're wearing a comb or floral bits, hair nets, anything like that's going to fit in there too. Handkerchiefs, which are fantastic, and I do not understand why we quit using handkerchiefs. Handkerchiefs are amazing, and they're so incredibly useful. But I think that's because somehow in the 20th century we decided handkerchiefs are this big, and they really aren't useful for anything. But in the 19th century, handkerchiefs are fantastic because they're 20 inches wide, give or take a few inches, and you can do things like carry food in them or touch growth things so you don't get your hands dirty. And they're not just snot rags. There's lots and lots of uses for handkerchiefs. So I always carry one with me. Hand fan. I live in Texas. I almost always carry a fan with me because that's important. And then we come to toiletries. This is something that's often forgotten. And I do right here, consider making a toiletry case, a period toiletry case. The Workwoman's Guide of 1838 has a pattern, and Godey's Lady's Book from 1859 also has a pattern for one. I have both. I kind of prefer the Godey's one, but both of them work just as well. And it's a great way, even if you're using modern toiletries, to kind of disguise them, carrying them from wherever you're sleeping to sometimes bathrooms are a little bit further away, to kind of take care of those needs. You have a period case for them. Always helps the ambiance. So I have up here menstruation products as needed. You may not need them for a particular event. I do enough events where I typically am on my period at least several times a year at an event. So this has come up for me quite a bit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a period accurate way to handle your menstruation. You can use modern ones. No one is going to know. Just because I'm crazy and do the period accurate thing doesn't mean everyone has to, because it works and it's comfortable, but it's not for everyone, and I understand that. But just as needed, menstruation products, medications as needed. I do recommend period containers if possible. whether that be daily vitamins you need to take or really any type of medication that you need. Do make sure you bring that. Do make sure that it is easily accessible to you, especially if it's something that you need to take often. So definitely make sure that is there. And again, I do recommend period containers, or at least period passable containers if possible. That way, if they get left out or something, hairdressing supplies, so like your combs, your brushes, hairpins, pomade, and or hair powder, whatever you need to dress your hair. I know a lot of people cheat and use like elastics and bobby pins and that sort of thing. I try to do things as period accurately as possible with my hair, but whatever you need to get your hair, in period shape, that's what you're gonna bring there. And then like your actual toiletries, like your toothbrush and toothpaste or tooth powder, if you're doing the historically accurate thing, cologne, deodorant, any period cosmetics that you require, so like face washes or makeup or anything like that, can go in there as well. And then it's always a good idea to have dressing pins, just for little minor things that go wrong with your dress, to have some dressing pins available for you. And a mending kit is always a really good thing to keep in your toiletry bag. If you have access to a small mirror, that can really help, especially if you're camping out when you won't actually have a mirror or anything to actually be able to see what you look like. A little small mirror is usually pretty helpful. And I like to bring my pitcher and wash basin. That's just a personal preference, because especially when it's hot outside, I can fill that with water, even a little bit of soap, have like a towel, and I can clean myself off, and I feel so fantastic afterwards. And it really helps when it's really hot and it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and like 60 or 70% humidity, and you've just been sweating all day long. It makes you feel brand new, and it really helps. So you can do that without the pitcher and wash basin. You can just bring a towel and get it wet and do that in the privacy of your tent or room or whatever. But I have a very small reproduction pitcher and wash basin. That's actually a reproduction of an 1830s one that I bring around to events. Shelter and bedding. This is an important one. So if you need a tent or a ground cloth, that's something you can bring. Your bedroll or your bed and mattress. Bedding, including sheets, coverlet, quilt, blankets, pillows, all that sort of thing. Whatever you need to bring. And that's going to vary by the event. You may have been told by the event organizer where you're going to be sleeping. Always clarify if you're not really sure. Sometimes people will assume that participants know that, oh, we're sleeping in the barracks today. And they're like, oh, cool, we have a bed. But you get there and there's like no bedding, no sheets, no anything. And you were expected to bring that, but you didn't know that. Just clarify ahead of time exactly what do I need to bring, exactly where am I sleeping, just things like that. I mean, it's always a good idea just to clarify and make sure that everyone's on the same page. Food, this is as needed. Some events do provide food for the participants. Others do not. Some of them will provide, I've been to events that just provided breakfast and you were on your own. I've been to events that provided one big dinner Saturday night and you were responsible for the rest of it on your own. So this is as needed. Just make sure you're bringing like plates, bowls, cutlery, drinking vessels, at least one per person. Think through your dietary needs, whether you have allergies or aversions to food or anything like that. Do keep in mind the area that you're in and the time of year and what would be available, so you're picking out period correct foods. Look for period receipt books for ideas, especially on recipes. And do try to limit foods that do not need a refrigerator, although I do have like a little mini note down there about how to basically refrigerate items for a short period of time without an actual refrigerator. This is where you're going to need like cooking vessels, like your pots, skillets, spoons, spatulas, that sort of thing. Any fire starting supplies, anything you need for cooking, and then serving and storage containers as needed. And then occupation, think through what you want to do. Instead of just being like me who sits and talks to everybody all day long, doesn't ever get anything done. It's always good to have a project. I always bring projects I don't ever work on. So sewing blocks is a great idea with little projects in it. Doesn't even have to be anything important. I have a silk apron that I think started my very first year reenacting. It's been 12-ish years. The apron still isn't done, but it sits in my sewing box and looks pretty. And when anyone asks me, oh, what are you doing? Well, I have this apron here. Not working on it, but I have it to work on if I get bored enough. Never actually get to that point where I actually am bored enough to work on that apron though. So, um, yeah, I don't think there's not much more to do on it. I just haven't done it. Writing or art supplies, whether you're, an artist, a drawer, you draw or you paint or whatever, writing, all that. You can bring all those supplies. Books or reading material. If you have kids, you may want to bring some toys for them. Musical instruments is needed. Firearms or weapons, again, as needed for the particular event. I brought a firearm to an event before. It was actually my fiance's, but he had me bring it with me. It didn't work, but I had one. Whatever else you need for that particular event in your impression. Just think through how you're going to keep busy all weekend. Sometimes you'll have a job, like they'll tell you, you're going to be doing this. And sometimes it's, sitting, telling about a room. Well, okay, that's great. And if you're super busy with the visitors, that's fine. But what if there's a lull? Are you one of those people who need something to do? I am. So, I would bring a book in that situation. I'd bring my sewing box in that situation. Just kind of think about how you're going to keep from getting bored. If you have a true occupation, you're going to need to bring what you will need to set up. Like a 19th century doctor may have surgical kit or period medications. A seamstress will have projects, a sewing machine, perhaps, little sewing tools and dress form and that sort of thing. Just kind of think through, if you are an actual profession, just think through what you need. And then we have miscellaneous, like chairs and seating, which I never bring. I just kind of either borrow someone else's or sit on the ground. It doesn't bother me. Tables, which I don't particularly find it necessary in most situations, but some people do. I have friends who have tavern impressions, and so they need a tent and they need seats and tables for everyone to sit on. So that would be important for their impression. I'm fine with sitting on the ground and eating, just out of my hands on a plate. So I don't particularly bring those sort of things, but some people may find that kind of necessary. Chamber pot, which is kind of personal preference. I have one. I've not ever used it, but I have one. I don't usually bring it to events. But there have been events where I've kind of wanted it to be simply because I'm a quarter mile away from the restrooms. And I'm I don't know if I want to get up in the middle of the night and deal with that. But if you have kids, highly recommend a chamber pot. If you are kind of grossed out with the idea of a chamber pot, what you would do, and this was shared to me by a friend who had a young child, and she would take her chamber pot and she would put a Walmart bag in it, and then she'd fill it with cat litter, and then that way the smell was taken care of and there wasn't any sloshing, and at the end of the event she could just take the plastic bag, tighten a knot, throw it away, and she didn't have to deal with cleaning out the chamber pot. It was still clean. So apparently that works really well for people. If you have young children and you're far away from the restroom, might be a good idea to do something like that. I always do try to bring a pencil, paper, or notepad, just something to jot notes down. Sometimes, a lot of my events are yearly events. A lot of the events I attend are annual events, so I do the same thing year after year after year. And sometimes it's just nice to make a note of, next year for this particular event, I would like to bring this next year. There's one event that I actually never ended up going back to, but we were portraying immigrants, and the guys and the ladies were separated into different little camps. We were kind of sitting around a fire, talking in character amongst each other, and the visitors would kind of come by and listen in on our conversations, maybe talk to us a little bit, and then kind of move on to the next encampment. And we were us ladies were just sitting there talking, and we just kind of sat there and was like, you know what? These women would have had to go through things like, what if someone had to give birth on the trail? What if someone had died? And so I was like, I have a realistic baby doll. I should probably dress her up in period clothes, and then I can actually talk about what it was like to be, pregnant, traveling, and getting here and giving birth to a baby and not being in my own place with my own family and all those fears. And so I actually made a note, hey, bring the baby next year, and I ended up not going next year. So, but just having that sort of thing, that way you can make notes, because if you're like me, you will not remember at the end of the event what you said you were going to bring the next year, especially a year afterwards. I'm not going to remember it at all. And of course, anything that's event-specific items. So like gifts for a person, pamphlets, anything you were asked to bring with you, if you're distributing letters at the event, anything that you need for that particular event, bring that under miscellaneous. And that's about it for the actual packing portion. I do have a little instructions about how to use 2 rocks and some sand, wet sand, to make a little mini refrigerator. if needed. I tend to not, I've actually never done this. I've heard it's really good, but I've actually never done this because I just don't bring things that need to be refrigerated. And then I kind of made a second note, like as you get started, it's a good idea to start collecting period containers and luggage, like small trunks, which can be difficult to carry and move, but packs, carpet bags, bonnet bags. Just replace the most visible containers first and then move on to the smaller ones. And that way eventually, it's very hard and very expensive all at the same time to get everything period accurate. You know, from your clothes to your underpinnings to your containers and luggage. So start with the clothes because you can always hide all your modern containers. You can put them back in the car after you've unpacked. And then slowly just start thinking, you know what, I still want my clothes that are not being worn in a period container. I'm going to go buy a carpet bag for that. Start with that, then move on to other things like your toiletry bag and just things as you go through. Oh, I need a box for my bonnet. I'm going to go buy that now. That way it's not just so overwhelming and so expensive all at once. Just as needed, start collecting some period containers for all this. But I think we can go ahead and look and see kind of what this looks like as far as how I pack. Because for every event I go to, I make one of these. And I actually color code it because I'm weird. But I have it for every event. I have the name of the event. And I have everything detailed what I'm bringing. Exactly what I'm going to pack. Exactly what's going to go into my bag. And typically exactly where it's going to go. So mine looks different than this because I don't have it separated by clothing and toiletries or whatever I have. Here's my large carpet bag. Here's everything I'm going to put into my large carpet bag. Here's my smaller carpet bag. Here's everything I'm going to put in the smaller carpet bag. I have a nightgown bag. This is everything that's going to go in the nightgown bag. So that's how I pack. And it's how I mark my packing is by container. Not necessarily like this. This is just an easier way to show people because not everyone's going to have the same containers that I do. But I can go ahead and show you one of the ones I do. All right, so this is one of my events that I'm going to this year. This is Lots Tavern at Washington on the Brazos, which is late February 2023. And so I'm just going to go through how I use this. I don't think I actually have any of this color coded. I think I have everything done, but we'll see. The way I color code things is I do it by projects because I don't always have everything done for an event. So what I'll do is if there's anything to do, I will list the steps that would need to be done and I'll color code it green if I have all the supplies and I can go ahead and get it done. Yellow if I've ordered supplies but I'm just waiting on it to get in, or red if I still need to purchase something for the particular event, whether it be something I just purchase outright or if it's purchasing supplies to make something. And that just kind of helps me keep my projects ordered and focused in my brain. But like for this one, I wrote carpet bag, so I'm only going to be bringing one carpet bag. And I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work because apparently I gave my carpet bag to one of my friends because she was taking some stuff home for me because I was in the Model A and couldn't fit into the car. So I don't think all this is going to actually fit into this carpet bag, which means I need to redo this. But we'll figure that out later. So I have like here my boots. So I'm wearing boots for this particular event, mostly because it rained the entire weekend last year. And it is late February in early March. So yeah, there's a good possibility of some rain. And I would rather not be stuck in boots or shoes that can't get wet. So go ahead and get my full leather boots out here and wear those. Stockings, 3 pairs. It's a Saturday and Sunday event. So 3 stockings, one for every day in the event plus an extra. And really, I'll get there Friday night. And my big deal when I get to events, I immediately go get dressed in period clothes. And I put all my modern stuff in the car. And even if everyone else is coming in modern and still unpacking, I feel better when I'm at an event to just be fully in period stuff. So I'll probably end up wearing an extra pair of stockings Friday night. But then that'll probably be my sleeping pair of stockings for the rest of the weekend because I don't like sleeping in dirty stockings. So I'll either put on the stockings I'm going to wear the next day and sleep in those, or I'll use my extra pair of stockings to actually sleep in. But that's just me. I'm bringing some knitted garters that are based off original I own, or original pair that I own, I suppose. Chemise, I'm actually only bring 2 this weekend, mostly because the rest of them are packed away because I'm moving, and I do not have my 3rd chemise, so I only have access to 2. And what it will probably mean is I probably won't get nasty, gross, and sweaty this event, so I don't have to really worry about it, but I may, after I wear the first chemise, go ahead and wash it and hang it out to dry. And that way, if something happens to the second chemise, I will have a spare, technically, which is something I've also done in the past. My 1930 stays are on here. I actually need to put plus lacing a needle. That is very important. I need to make sure I know where that is. Otherwise, it's going to take me a really long time to get dressed. Under petticoat, I didn't mark exactly which one. Oh, I know. I was waiting to see what the weather was going to do. Because I have a wool flannel under petticoat, and then I have some white cotton ones. I was going to wait to see exactly which one I wanted closer to the event. 1850s quarter petticoat, even though this is an 1830s event, because my 1830s one is currently on display at Fanthorpe Inn underneath my silk dress for a display on wedding clothes in the 1830s. So I don't actually have my 1830s quarter petticoat. I have my 1850s one, which is going to irritate me because it is machine sewn, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I likely won't even be wearing the quarter petticoat. It'll probably bother me just enough to not want to wear it, and I'll just wear the 2 petticoats. Bustle, my working wool petticoat. I don't know why in my brain I have 2 wool petticoats. One's the plaid working, and one is the plaid wool petticoat. The other one's the working wool petticoat. They're both working class garments. I don't know why I differentiate them out like that, but that's how it does in my brain. So this is the brown one that I'm bringing. I could probably just start calling it the brown wool petticoat, but I've always called it the working wool petticoat. Pockets, caps, I'm going to bring 3 of them. Neckerchiefs, I don't know why I'm bringing 3 of them, but I'm bringing 3 of them. And then, of course, the next bag basically is my nightgown bag, which is patterned from the Workwoman's Guide, has a nightgown bag in it. So I'm bringing my nightgown in it. I'm bringing my 1830s wrapper in it, which I need to find because I have no idea where that is right now. I'm bringing my nightcap. I'm bringing, or my toiletry bag. This is actually my toiletry bag. Hair curls, because it's the 1830s. My wrap corset, which is what I bring to 1830s events when I want to kind of relax, because it's a lot less rigid than my typical 1830s stays. So my wrap corset. And then wool stockings. Oh, these are the stockings I'm actually going to be sleeping in. Well, I already had that squared away. Oh, here's one. There's a project. So my cotton dress I'm bringing. I'm going to cut down the neckline. It's a high neck right now because I based it off an original, but it's driving me insane and I wanted a lower neck. So that's going to be a super simple project to do. And yeah, I can go ahead and get that done. I don't have to purchase anything for that. I may have to call Rhett and have him bring me my extra fabric though, because I'm pretty sure I said that with him. And then on my blue wool dress, I'm bringing 2 dresses, one to wear plus a spare, and brown wool cloak, my working bonnet, and then bedding. So bedding is separate. These things, like my dresses, my cloaks, my bonnet, don't fit into a bag, so they are not in containers. Bedding, so my mattress, sheets, quilt, wool blankets, and feather pillows. Depending on the weather, if it's going to be really warm weather, I probably won't be bringing the wool blankets. And I might change out the quilt for a coverlet, but as of right now, that's what I'm bringing because last year it was cold. Sewing baskets, and I put in here my 2 projects I'm going to bring. So right now I'm working on a lot of baby clothes, mostly because I expect to be needing those in the next year or 2. So I'm trying to get them done. So I'm going to bring some shirts to work on for the babies and some little baby shoes that I have one done and I need to go finish the other one. It's been in there for like 2 years now. So actually, no, just a year. I finished the other one almost exactly a year ago. So yeah, I need to finish the other one. And because the sewing basket's what I'm going to be bringing, but this particular event, I am sleeping at a plantation down the road. It's about half a mile from the tavern that everyone else is staying at. So I'm just going to bring my sewing basket with me to the event. So my sewing basket is going to have everything I need for the day, whereas my clothes and my bedding are going to stay at Barrington, the plantation. So I'm going to need my fork, my knife, my spoon, plate, bowl, cup. I'm going to need that in my sewing basket. I'm also going to put some leather gloves and some wrist warmers in there. Why do I have my phone case on there? Oh, because that's where I keep my lacy needle. I have a little leather case for my phone. That way, if I pull it out accidentally, it looks like it's a period book. And I keep my lacy needle in there. So I always know exactly where it is. Yes, that's my lacy. That's why I didn't put it up there with the stays. And I pencil a notepad. That way I just can make notes as needed. And then my small carpet bag, I'm going to bring my glass lanterns, a candle bag, not a bag, it's a box. Box plus matches. That's just very nitpicky, but I'm going to make it. And I have pencil notepad twice. I don't need that twice. Yeah, so that's basically how I use that typically there's more than one project that I'm doing. It's quite an extensive list. There have been events where nearly everything was color coded in some way, like the World War One event last November, because that was a brand new time period for me. Everything had to be done. So when I made my packing list, everything had a color to it. So that was just that particular event. But for 1830s, I've done the 1830s enough that I don't need a lot of things done. I really don't even have to have the cotton print dress cut down. I can wear it as is. It's fine. So hopefully that helped a little bit, especially if you're brand new and you wanted to know exactly what to pack. I know it's not specifically, I know that's not very specific for you, but hopefully it gives you kind of a nice starting point. Maybe will help you remember some things that you might have forgotten otherwise. So again, I hope that helps somebody. But I think that's about it for today. So thank you so much for joining me today as we talked about how to pack for a living history event for a lady. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. If there's something else that you pack that I didn't mention or you find essential, please mark that down in the comments. I'd love to know. Maybe something I haven't thought of, or maybe something I actually do pack and I don't ever remember that I pack. But other than that, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here on Monday.